Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Awesome Albums Extras. And today, as you gathered from the title, is more fun facts about Pink Floyd's 1973 album, Dark Side of the Moon. I have a lot to say about it, so let's just get started. I'll go ahead and refresh you on the band. Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Richard Wright, and Nick Mason. Originally the album was going to be called Dark Side of the Moon, an assorted piece for lunatics, but got changed to Eclipse after Medicine Head created an album called Dark Side of the Moon. This upset the band because they settled on that name before Medicine Head's album came out. Fortunately for Floyd, unfortunately for Medicine Head, the album didn't sell well, which allowed Floyd to change it back right before the tour. Dark Side is highly regarded as one of the greatest albums released of all time, but nobody ever stops to think what this album is all about. We know it's a concept album, but what's the concept? According to Roger Waters, and he acknowledges that those who are Hindu or similar beliefs would disagree with him. You only have one shot, and you've got to make choices based on whatever moral, philosophical, or political position you may adopt. You make choices during your life, and those choices are influenced by political considerations, and by money, and by the dark side of all of our natures. You get the chance to make the world a lighter or darker place in some small way. We all get the opportunity to transcend our tendencies to be self-improved and mean and greedy. We all make a small mark on the great painting of life. End quote by Waters. This is essentially what the album is about. He wanted to create an album about all the pressures and difficulties that crop up in one's life and create anxiety, and the potential you have to solve them or choose the path you're going to walk. It's a lot more sophisticated than the stoner album that people always associate it with. Moving on to the album cover, I have some new fun stuff about the album cover. The album cover was created by Storm Thorgerson, who created many of the band's artwork. The artwork was going to look significantly different. Instead, it was going to be a photographic representation of Marvel's Silver Surfer, involving real waves somehow. It was immediately rejected. Richard Wright said, "Can we not have one of your funny pictures, Storm?" He replies, "What do you mean? That's what I do. Pictures." With that in mind, he was working late one night. He showed his partner, Aubrey, Powell, a picture of a prism that was sitting atop some sheet music. Both were captivated by this image. Storm felt that it spoke to the album's themes and the band itself. It represented both the diversity and cleanliness of the sound of the music. He also said, in a more conscious way, it worked for a band with a reputation for their light show. He continues and says, "The triangle is a symbol for ambition, one of the themes Roger was concerned with. You had several ideas coming together at once." I still think that maybe the colors of the rainbow might mean any color you like, but Storm takes it one step further than what I was thinking. The prism has seen different changes over the years. Storm photographed a real prism for the album's 20th anniversary, and for the 2003 remix, he made a stained glass window version. They're both really cool looking. Now, before I share new facts about the songs, for those who have actually listened to the album before, you might have heard some talking throughout the album, maybe talking about insanity or dying, things like that. Roger Waters created 20 questions on note cards with questions like, what does the phrase, the dark side of the moon, mean? And are you afraid of dying? Were you in the right? When was the last time you acted out violence? Various things like that. And throughout the album, we will hear various people's responses to those questions. One rejected interview was with Paul and Linda McCartney. According to the band, Paul was trying to be funny. Waters says he didn't want to give anything away. We needed people that were open and direct. What McCartney's responses were, we might not ever know. Now, with that in mind, let's get started. Spoken pieces about madness came from the roadies of Peter Watts and Chris Adamson, and also from Abbey Road doorman Jerry O'Driscoll. Roger claimed the lyrics of Breathe are an exhortation directly mainly at myself, but also anybody else who cares to listen. It's about trying to be true to one's path. End quote by Waters. What you hear here is an 8-note sequence that they tried to do similar to what The Who's Pete Townshend did with Baba O'Reilly. The footsteps you hear throughout On the Run were recorded in the underground tunnel from the Natural History Museum that runs through South Kensington Tube Station, and that guy better get out of the way of the oncoming train that is coming down that tunnel. That was done on guitar. I just think it's a neat sound effect. That and the dialogue were done by roadie Roger the Hat. Nick Mason said he had a lot of fun playing rototums to do that ticking, and I have to agree with him. I've listened to the song since I was 7, and I've always been so fascinated with this intro and the ticking, and of course, Roger's epic bass line. The vocals start and you'll hear the message that Waters is trying to tell us during the song. He would later admit that during the making of the record, he was 29 at the time, he suddenly felt as though he was grown up, that childhood and adolescence were just training for adult life. The song is just about making the most of your life and not wasting it. Throughout the song, we hear some female backup singers. Those credits go to Doris Troy, Leslie Duncan, Barry St. John, and Liza Strike. Originally an instrumental, vocals were added just a few weeks before the LP was finished. The song had something missing. The band already rejected engineer Alan Parsons' suggestion of audio from a NASA spacewalk. He then found Claire Torrey, a regular session performer at Abbey Road. She wasn't sure they were going to use her vocals, but they loved it. About 3 decades later, she sues for a co-writing credit on the track and settles for an undisclosed amount in 2005. I would have loved to have known this information in the original video. One of their most popular songs, and it had little information on it. Well, here's what I found. The intro was created by Waters and Mason. They recorded sound effects at home. Nick Mason recalls in his autobiography, Inside Out, I had drilled some holes inside old pennies and then threaded them on strings. They gave one sound on the loop of the 7. Roger had recorded coins swirling around his mixing bowl Judy, his wife, used for her pottery. Each sound was measured out the same tape with a ruler before being cut to the same length and carefully spliced together. That is very impressive to hear just their techniques that they would have used back in 1973. So different than what you would hear on anything that was produced today. This saxophone solo that you hear is by Dick Parry, an old Cambridge mate of David Gilmour. Okay, so you're hearing some voices at the end. I don't even know if I was drunk at the time, and you're hearing a woman saying you're cruising for a bruising. Those voices were done by some roadies, as well as Wings guitarist Henry McCulloch and his wife, who were replying to more of Waters' flashcards. This is the first song laid down for Dark Side, followed by Money. Roger Waters says that this is his favorite song on the album, and is also one of Richard Wright's favorites as well. Wright says it's a perfect example of the music and the lyrics combining to create emotion. It's probably the best song Roger and I have ever written together. End quote by Wright. The lyrics range from going to war in verse 1. Then in the second verse talks about color prejudice and civil rights. The thought of passing a down and out on the street and not helping on the third. This song has 2 sax solos, also done by Dick Parry. Gilmour asked him to do a breathy sound similar to that of Gandharva by US electronic duo Beaver and Krause. Little fun fact about Any Color You Like. It's an instrumental piece, as you hear, originally called Scat. The final title came from a favorite catchphrase of Chris Adamson, saying, "You can have any color you like." A song with so many references to Syd Barrett, but then there's this line.
The lunatic is on the grass.
Waters told Mojo, "That was my song. I wrote it at home. The grass was always a square between River Cam and King's College Chapel. I don't know why, but when I was young, that was always the piece of grass, more than any other piece of grass, that I felt constrained to keep off. I don't know why, but the song still makes me think of that piece of grass. The lunatic was Sid, really. He was obviously on my mind." It was very Cambridge-based, the whole song. End quote by Roger. Lastly, the maniacal laughter was done by Peter Watts. Eclipse was tacked on by the end because Waters felt that he needed the album to have a proper ending. The lyrics suggest that while the human race has potential to live in harmony with nature and itself, this is depressingly never the case. Waters wrote Eclipse while they were touring before recording the album and brought it with him to a gig in the Colston Hall in Bristol on a piece of lined paper with the lyrics written on it. Despite the depressing message, it has an uplifting feel to it. Maybe it's because the harmonies of Water with Gilmour and Doris Troy all together? Wow, I didn't realize just how much new information I had until recording this video. One thing I do want to correct was a mistake I said in the original video. I mentioned a bet between David Gilmour and band manager Steve O'Rourke that it wouldn't crack the top 10. I thought Steve lost. Turns out Gilmour was the one who said that it wouldn't hit the top 10. The album became their first ever American chart topper and climbed to number 2 in Britain. Gilmour later said he would have won either way. If it didn't make the top 10, then he won the bet. But if it did hit the top 10, he still won. So congratulations, Dave. You won. Two more things I want to say before closing. First, like I said, this is pretty much the essential stoner album. However, they weren't on drugs when they recorded this, surprisingly. Roger admitted doing acid a few times, but that was the 60s. Nick Mason might have drank a little bit, but didn't really touch on any of the drugs, at least during this album. I can't say about any of the albums before this. David Gilmour and Richard Wright might have done a small amount of pot, but Wright says that the dope doesn't agree with him. He says it makes him paranoid. Pretty much cigarettes was the only thing, and alcohol, during the making of this album. They didn't plan or expect this album to be as popular as it was with the stoner community. Well, for now, this concludes all my information I have on Dark Side of the Moon. If you have any fun facts, I'd love to hear them, and you can comment in that comment section below. In the meantime, though, you can check out my original Dark Side of the Moon video, as well as my Awesome Albums Extras Part 1, where I have a section talking about more of Dark Side of the Moon. But until then, this has been Awesome Andrew, reminding you that Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon is an awesome album, and I will see you guys next time.